Welcome to Exploring Digital with Purr, a podcast for entrepreneurs and CEOs who want their businesses to benefit from a digital-first approach. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Exploring Digital with Purr. I'm joined today by Sarah Fulford-Williams, who's the founder of Our Own Brand. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So before we kick off with today's scheduled discussion, as another agency that have really promoted use of Clutch and really go to great efforts to get reviews on your Clutch profile, how have you found that as an agency and what have the benefits been?
For us, it's been a huge part of getting our presence out there, to be honest. I think being a creative agency in London is like being a tiny fish in a very big ocean. And no matter how great your work is or how good you are with clients, it can be impossible to be seen. So it's been an incredible visibility tool for us. And I think from a client perspective, the fact that all reviews are independently vetted means that they're essentially getting to see some, case studies and reviews of our work without even having to engage with us. So I think it helps to remove a lot of steps and adds a lot of credibility to the process of being selected or contacted. How about you?
Certainly, it's been probably about a source of maybe a third of our new business in the last year. It's become an increasingly important part. And just having it as part of your strategy with clients, to encourage leaving reviews and to encourage, check us out on there, has become, a good part of the new business, but also the operational process of the business. And, pretty much everyone I speak to who's on it has found it a positive influence, not just as a positive tool, but something to think about the transparency and to think about the end result as a basis for gathering feedback. It's just a really important things for business to think about, and I guess a precursor to the situation that we've been put into right now, where suddenly transparency and accountability to people is what makes a big difference right now. So. With that in mind, as a branding agency and as that being part of your brand and your proposition to clients, has that influenced, I guess, how you work with clients or what you recommend to them in terms of recommending review platforms or how you go to demonstrate your reputation with clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we live in the age of review. Generally, if we eat a good meal in a restaurant, we leave a review on Google, typically. Level 5 Google Explorer over here, joking. But, I think we're very used to giving feedback, and it's become a really big part of our culture, especially being transparent and honest. And for us, I think it says a lot to our clients that we want them to share their experience. Like, this isn't just a one-sided conversation. We want you to tell us how you feel about the process. And certainly with every client we take on, our motto basically is that we essentially become a part of your team. We're a small agile agency. We're not here to set up tons of, processes for the sake of having processes. We work in sprints. We want you to have full transparency and accountability to the work we're doing and oversight on everything we're doing. So I think Clutch is really important as part of that process because it's like the cherry on the cake. We've gone so far as to include you in all of this, but actually we want you to tell the world how you feel about working with us. And we're proud of what we do. And, largely, I think they're all 5-star reviews, which is a testament to us, but also I think to the relationships that we like to build with clients.
Completely, yes. So you mentioned there that as you've been a very agile agency, and I know we discussed how you did have a permanent office, but it wasn't where most of the team were based, and you had quite a flexible freelancer basis for how you'd grown and scaled the agency. How do you think that's been a real benefit to you over the past few months with lockdown and the impact of COVID? And do you think that's now going to stay as part of your longer term growth strategy?
Absolutely. I mean, we're very lucky in that I would say half our team are permanent and then the rest are freelancers. So obviously we've not had to furlough huge swathes of staff, which is a very painful thing to have to do on both sides of the equation, to be honest with you. And a lot of people I know in agencies have lost their jobs. Salaries are huge overheads, just like having physical premises is and are for lots of people. And certainly we made the decision to give up our office just because we don't know how long this pandemic's going on. And actually we've been able to work with clients exactly as I'm talking to you now. And I think it's really encouraged, openness and accountability to sit on a video call with someone and get to know them. And certainly with our teams, we We work in a very startup way for an agency, to be honest with you. So everything's in sprints. We do everything in a very collaborative way. We have stand-ups, and it's just meant moving things to Slack into video in a way that potentially would have been done in person before. So, the ways of working are still there. I think if anything, we're in touch more now than we were when we had the premises and when we met up in person.
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting to hear how agencies were so ready for this change in most cases and ahead of the curve for most businesses. Did you see a difference in approach to the clients you were working with? Was it harder for some of the established, I guess, because you mentioned lots of hospitality businesses you work with, they're just not going to be able to transition in the same way?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was very difficult to watch. A lot of our clients, some have actually folded, some businesses now don't exist, which is really sad. And
Heartbreaking, yeah.
it's heartbreaking. And I think who saw this coming? Nobody did. It was a matter of months and it blindsided us all. Obviously, I think agencies like us are set up to adapt and to change and to grow and be flexible because that's the nature of what we do. Every day is different. But when you have a physical premises and you're a restaurant or you're a bar and you can't open your doors to people, there aren't really digital doors that you can create for your customers in that way. That being said, I think this pandemic has been an incredible time of innovation and opportunity for a lot of businesses. I think we're seeing a lot of people thinking outside the box and creating new solutions and new service offerings for their customers, and customers beyond the scope of who they were catering for originally, to kind of draw them in and provide a service that's really needed right now.
So are there any of your hospitality industry clients that you think have been able to transition really well or pivot and offer something new as a result?
Um, Not so much in hospitality. A music festival client of ours, Meadows in the Mountains, we're actually creating a digital festival, which
Oh,
will be
cool.
hosted over the period where the actual festival would have been on. So, luckily the lockdown laws have changed in the UK to allow people being able to gather outside. So it means that we can actually do some live recordings with bands on rooftops and in open spaces that are obviously socially distanced and very safe. But also, online workshops and classes and creating lots of user generated content opportunities through competitions and what have you. Because I think in the instance of a festival, obviously it's so much more than just an event. It's a very emotional thing. It's a place where people come to make memories, and we're trying to do that in a digital way that still feels very on brand, but also inclusive, and right for the client, obviously.
Yeah, fantastic. So using user generated content and dividing that up with other things you can put together to make something new and special.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
absolutely. And I think people are always really willing to share their personal experiences of something like a festival, especially if it's something they're very loyal to and have gone to for many years. So in this instance, and with that audience, it's really well received and really highly engaged with, which is always really great.
And then, so as part of your values as an agency and how you approach branding projects, it feels like you've got some similar values to us in terms of well, remind me of the three main values that you have as a business.
So for us, it's trust and transparency, honesty, and basically just becoming part of our clients' teams. I think something that we're really focused on are creating ways of working that you kind of open us up. And I think a lot of frustrations with some agencies is that clients get a project that's just signed, sealed, and delivered, and all they've done initially is brief it in, and they have no oversight over anything from the time they have a conversation to the end. And I think for us, feedback's a really important part of every iteration and stage of the journey. So communication's really key for us. We set up very clear lines of communication. We use Trello. We love Trello. We're Team Trello over here. Trello and Slack to kind of do that and ensure that we just have these open dialogues every day, really, that allow us to kind of keep iterating and changing and making sure that we're delivering the best possible quality project for our clients.
Absolutely, and I love the way you've described it on your site, which is realness, relatability, and resonance. And resonance is
Mm.
one of our own values, and I think you're the only
Oh,
other agency I've come across who shares that as one. But I think it's what we're both trying to say is, if you get everything set up right, it has this impact that is greater, so much greater than the sum of its parts. Whether it's getting your brand positioned well or getting your technology talking to each other properly,
yeah.
it allows you to have the scalability or the impact of a global business, even if you're only a tiny little startup team.
But this
Um,
is this is so key, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Quantity doesn't always equate to quality, and I think this is where smaller agencies are really winning right now, because we don't have these huge overheads and these huge offices. We're not having to furlough team members. We're actually able to adapt and react to this in a way that big agencies can't. And I think I said it earlier, but we're busier than ever. And the thing that's attracting people to us are those values and the fact that we're not, huge domineering agencies, which I'm not, kind of shunning that and saying that's bad. I just think right now it's meant that people like us are able to react in an emotional way that really works for clients, because we're on your side, we get you, we're of the same size, and we can be flexible to your needs right now.
Completely, yeah. It's hard for an enterprise grade company to shift and pivot marketing in the same way that
Yeah.
everyone had to, as quickly as a smaller team can. And
Yeah.
to come up with these new ideas and to promote this sort of agile way of working. Big companies have been pushing for this a long time and trying to work out whether pod structures make it work better, or these new ways of setting up teams and client relationships. But it's just hard to compete with a small business in terms of how quickly you can move and change this position or evolve your values to say, well, look, this is all the ways in which being a transparent and an open brand now really matter to people.
Mm. What are your other values out of interest? I know we share resonance. I'd love to know the others.
Well, Purr didn't always just mean, well, it always just meant a cat noise, really. But
I was going to say.
we later made Purr stand for something, and that was that we were proactive, and it was always about making the upfront investment in something rather than waiting for it to be an issue. That whatever we did would then be unified, so it wouldn't just be, oh, we'll put this in place for marketing and then sales don't really know about it. It was trying to understand across a business how a technology system could benefit everyone. What was the management need for it? What was the marketing need for it? What was technology's input? So R stands for relevance. So whatever you do, being relevant to your audience, being able to compete, being able to stay innovative. And then the fourth one, resonant, the one we share with you, saying that if you get those three
Mm,
pillars working together, that you can really be all singing from the same hymn sheet and have a company that um, just has such a smooth way of operating using technology.
mm.
And the brand has the similar all-encompassing effect. If you get everyone working to the same brand ideals and values, and if their boss can remember them on a podcast, that would also be great.
I know, same. It's difficult, We're wearing lots of hats. We're all doing lots of things over here.
But that and also I think so many people's sort of image of their business or understanding of their values was something that kind of kicked in when they got into the office and they were like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm now there, I'm at work. And suddenly the issue of being able to kind of flick into work mindset um, isn't about going somewhere or putting a shirt on and going to a meeting. It's no,
Mm.
I've now turned the laptop on, I'm at work, and how can I envisage those? How can I embody those brand values just because I've jumped onto a conference call?
I think, yeah, that's such a valid point. And certainly when we founded our own brand, that was integral to, the DNA of the agency was actually, this isn't about going to a certain place or dressing a certain way or acting a certain way. We didn't want to be a stereotypical agency, certainly in the hierarchy setup. We don't have account directors, account managers. Like, our team is agile because everybody on it does about 5 different things, and I think that's our superpower, because it means that we can take on projects that large scale agencies would, and at like a quarter of the cost, but still deliver the same quality of work. And I think that's touching on, quantity doesn't always equal quality. we really uphold that in everything that we do. And I think for us, it's about giving the most value, and certainly in, the relationships that we have with our clients through to the execution of the project itself. I think it's really important just to always want to deliver the best and have the best in class tech, like in your case, or in our case, making, the best branding, finding, that DNA, that golden thread that really will make a brand unique and authentic, which I think is a word that has slightly been bastardized lately. But, making a brand stand out on a merit of who they are.
What's your take on how much of a brand's positioning or its presence on social media should be about the people behind it, and things like what we're doing now, as well, podcasts from managing directors and founders of businesses? Is that something that you've consulted on for or advised clients on in the past, and is that becoming more of your process in a world where corporate comms have got less meaning than if it's a personal discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. We always say showcase the people behind the products or the service or the business. I think it's the only thing that will really set you apart. And I think so many brands are guilty of creating content that they think people want to see, instead of creating content that resonates with their values and who they are. Because that's the thing that really stands out. I think social media it can be just like screaming into the void, to be honest with you. And, a lot of people we speak to who come to us and want us to manage social for them, so many say, oh, I don't really think I need it, or I don't really think social is important. But here we are, we've got our apps that we carry around, every day, our trusted, like 5 things we refer to. And if you can harness that space in someone's life in a way that feels right and fits within their world because your values resonate with them, then it's the best marketing you will ever do. No amount of SEO or PPC can pay for that,
Oh, completely. But at the same time, over the last few months, where the volume of personal content of all sorts of content, it's just been ramped up so significantly. Not using agency, handheld on phones at home, and recording pieces to camera. Do you think it's now saturated? And what do people need to do to then innovate further and push it and evolve their content so that there's something unique about what they're offering, other than just yet another podcast with an agency owner?
I mean, who would do one of those to begin with?
Right.
Yes, absolutely. I think, there was a time and place for the handheld thing. And I think every brand out there, I say every brand, a lot of brands did an amazing job of kind of creating these from home campaigns, which really resonated with people because they were also at home. Like, we were also sharing those circumstances. It felt close to the bone in a way that worked because all it did was shine a light on how we're all feeling. That being said, I think now that we're kind of edging out of, a coronavirus world, we need to devise a new strategy that still takes all of those learnings. So that emotional intelligence, that sensitive advertising, that listening to hear and not to respond, which is what I think a lot of brands do. They listen to just create a response that they think will resonate in the public sphere because so and so has done it or they've seen it in an article. I think listening to respond and actually listening to what your audience want and factoring that into your campaigns and also your brand values is going to be integral. And I think for brands and agencies alike, let's not forget there are people like Ad Age out there who've kept a record of how brands and agencies have responded to this crisis. So people who haven't responded sensitively and have, misused data or tried to profit on this pandemic, people are watching. And I think that's a takeaway for all of us in this, is that transparency is key because people are paying attention. There is a record of behavior online. I think if we come back to things like Clutch and reviews, that's a living record of someone saying, hey, you did a great job, or they did a terrible job. That's why it's important to document opinion and trust in the market just generally, I think.
Absolutely, and it's not always advisable to go back and change your blog posts a year later and make claims that you knew about coronavirus beforehand, that sort of thing.
Or test your eyesight by driving, 150 miles or 30 miles, or just going out when you have coronavirus. But, we'll all live and learn through this, and hopefully some people will get fired. We'll see.
Well, there's a new reason to stay indoors now, and that's hay fever. So that's going to help out. Good. Okay. So Coming out of lockdown as we are now, and thinking about the volume of new work that's starting, and all agencies just are hopefully starting to see a little bit of an uptick in terms of new business inquiries. You mentioned that you've actually recently onboarded 2 new team members as well, and I just wondered how that had gone, bringing on team members fully remotely. You've not met them; there's no immediate kind of way of meeting them, I guess, and how that's been for you as a process.
I think we were quite lucky with both of them in that they were like friends of friends, or they came through, our other designers and
Recommendation,
they'd
yeah.
worked with them. Exactly. So they weren't total strangers. But that being said, we are actually interviewing for a different position remotely. And it has its own set of challenges. I think video chat is great because you're able to tell a lot with body language. But also we just have to adapt and work with the circumstances that we've got. And I think to a large degree, trust trust people. And I think this whole pandemic has been really crucial to certainly big agencies and enterprise clients. Like the gig economy has been a thing for a long time. And I think companies and businesses towards that end of the spectrum have been very mistrusting of it. I think people will always say you won't get the most out of someone if they work from home. You can't trust someone to do their job if they work from home. And actually, that's been completely turned on its head, and I think kind of advanced the gig economy by about 5 years, which is incredible because you get so much more from people when you trust them and give them flexibility. I mean, I don't know about you, but I find myself working like 15 hours a day, and I don't notice I'm doing it because there's no distinction at the moment between being at home and going to work. And that's another thing I think businesses and people individually will have to learn, is to sort of create that picket fence of I'm in my job and now I'm at home.
Completely. And even if it's not that you're sat at a desk working, because there's no line drawn necessarily, hopefully people have found it less sort of stressful, I guess,
Mm,
being, having their working mind churning away into the evening. But also, some things just come to you because you've not had that disconnection, you've not switched off your work brain, and even if you're just sat doing something else entirely,
mm.
you can still have a breakthrough idea about something, just because it's now one and the same. You haven't really got those two sides to life.
Absolutely. I think I've had some of the best ideas I've ever had for clients whilst, like, I don't know, doing something really arbitrary, like putting out the bins or having a shower. And I think that plays into it a lot, is that I don't know, I think people are now not necessarily just looking at a job as a 9 to 5 thing and that it's this otherness, it's this other thing that I visit and then I leave. I think there are lots of positives to adapting this way of working because it means that you're kind of blurring the lines between what you do and who you are. And actually, you can put more of yourself into your job. There's a word, Meraki, which means to kind of do exactly that, to put lots of yourself into your physical job and be really happy as a result, because you're not really working if you love what you do. I know it's a bit twee and everybody says that, find a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. That's not strictly true. There are always times when it can be difficult, but it certainly helps to make it a lot more enjoyable and, to make it easier for you to put more of yourself into it.
Completely. And what's been really funny recently, just with the Italian level good weather we've been having.
I know.
Um, it's almost felt as though you've been on holiday, but you've had to be doing a little bit of work at the same time, regardless of whether you've still done a full working day or not. It still
Yeah.
feels like holiday mindset, and it's a very weird situation. And I think it was one of the reasons people are reluctantly going back to their desks, is because it feel less like being on a break.
Totally. I mean, I've been working in the garden, to be honest. I've been sitting outside under an umbrella, and it's very much felt like being on holiday. I think the urge to not have an Aperol spritz or a beer at 11 a.m. is very strong, but you have to fight it until at least 3. But it's nice. And I think, we are working through a global pandemic. We're not working from home. There is a big distinction. I think mentally it poses lots of challenges. I think, when none of us have really seen friends and family, we're not being able to go out and socialize. I think it'd be remiss for us to think that this is a normal set of circumstances. So if we can do it now, and we can be successful and creative and do a really good job at what we're doing in these circumstances, then when things kind of go back to normality, and I don't ever think they'll be the same normal as they were before, we'll be able to do it that much better.
Completely, yeah. So what's the future for our own brand and what you're going to offer? I mean, the values I think are still fantastic and just need to,
Sure.
I guess they're evolving with the times.
Yeah.
But do you think there'll be any difference in your approach or your new business acquisition, or do you feel like really, you're set up as an agile business to be able to just scale through it?
I think this has shown us that our values have built a great foundation for us as an agency and set us up to not only survive but thrive in times like this, which, we're very lucky. We're very, very lucky to be able to be doing as well as we are. We know that. But it's not luck by the same circumstances. It's because we've worked for it and set our business up in a way that allows us to work in this way. So I think we'll probably push to have a more remote and distributed team. I think there's a huge amount of resource in the world in terms of design talent that might not necessarily just be on your doorstep. And I think people changing their minds around that and broadening their horizons in that way will just benefit everybody. Um, and for us, I think, just to kind of keep pushing ahead, I think obviously we've been doing a lot of branding and rebrands, which is always brilliant when you're able to kind of be trusted to evolve a brand identity in that way and deliver something, of super high quality that helps people kind of move into that next chapter of their business. And I think, pushing forward to help people use social media in a way that is more meaningful, I suppose, less screaming into the void, more creating content for the sake of creating content that resonates with your brand values, and knowing that you'll find your tribe through doing that, I think is really important and something that, we hope to do a lot more of, certainly. How about you
No, it sounds
guys?
like I think we're also. It sounds really similar. We're working towards being more remote, more distributed, assuming that having a permanent office isn't in part of our immediate future, and what's um, the evolution of that, whether that's co-working spaces or regular meetups somewhere,
Mm,
and what we can simplify and outsource and not have to worry about, whether it's someone else handles all of the IT and it's no longer a concern, because that used to be something that was so kind of part and parcel of the office presence, things like that. So part of it is that side. The other side is, well, how do you evolve your positioning and your identity as a business? And I feel like, yeah, content's a huge part of that. And how
mm,
do we? And we've built up a vast bank of material that we've been working on, and we're distributing, and we're finding our voice through doing it. But there's a next step, which is, well, how do we make it more personal? How do we make it more special and unique? And as you say, how does it demonstrate the values and your
mm.
personal kind of connection to them? So it's a real voyage of discovery, but it's a fun one. It's been forced on us, and it's a kind of an interesting experience, a process to experience. But I feel really lucky to be in the agency world. I always described it as, if you have a job, then you can always lose your job. Whereas if you're in the agency
Mm.
world, you get a new job every day, so it doesn't really matter. You can always find a new revenue stream or client or specialism or technology that you're working with, and it's just, well, it's all what we've always done. Why should it change now? Just evolve with
Absolutely.
it.
I think it's that pause that's kind of allowing people to look at what they're doing and really question, am I happy with my service offering? Are there other things that we can be doing here that kind of allow us to be more creative or do more or give more value to clients? And certainly that's something that we did. So we've started a sister company to our own brand called Play It Louder, which is making custom digital tools for predominantly artists and brands. Because myself and my co-founder Rich, our background is music and startups. So we're working with some of the biggest labels in the UK as part of what we're doing with our own brand to create custom playlisters and remix apps, which is great because it taps into past experience, but also as an agency gives us an edge because there aren't other agencies really doing that out there. It's more of a development consideration. So I think it's always good to look within the skills of your team and the people around you and think, how can you push yourself forward using what you have at home? And I feel like coronavirus is very literally making people do that, especially when you're in the confines of, your four walls. So it gives you a lot of thinking time.
Completely. Well, look, it's fantastic hearing about what you've been up to and what the plans are. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thanks everyone for joining another episode of Exploring Digital with Purr. We'll see you again next time.
Thanks for joining. Remember to subscribe and follow us, and to share today's insights with other businesses you know who want to stay relevant in a digital-first world.